In a Champions League context, because they were one of the 32 teams drawn for this year's group stage this afternoon in Monaco. The four groups. Group A looks fascinating. Bayern Munich up against Manchester United again. Copenhagen and Galatasaray in there as well. Arsenal have drawn Sevilla, PSV and Lens. Napoli, the Italian champions, of course, taking on the 14-time Champions League winners Real Madrid, with Braga and Union Berlin, Champions League new boys, in that group. And in Group D, it's last year's runner-up, Inter against Benfica, Salzburg and Real Sociedad. Group E has Feyenoord against Atletico Madrid, Lazio and Celtic. In Group F, PSG, Dortmund, Milan, and what a welcome back to the competition for Newcastle United. Group G has Manchester City, the holders, against Leipzig again, and Red Star Belgrade, Young Boys. And Group H, Barcelona, Porto, Shakhtar, and Royal Antwerp. Well, loads to talk about there. We haven't as yet looked at Man City's group. How tough do you think that's going to be, Julian Lescott?
I don't think that's going to be tough at all, to be honest. I think they would have been favourites, obviously, for obvious reasons in any group. But the teams there, especially, I think they'll be confident. I think the biggest factor is Young Boys, away, artificial pitch. But other than that, I don't think there'll be any issues them going through and top in the group. Leipzig,
you'd think, would be the bigger adversary, although every time Man City face them, they seem to dispatch them with some ease. 6-3 a couple of years ago when they were in the group stage together. And then last season, in the last 16, they put them out as well, Jules.
Yeah, in the second leg especially, they drew 1-1. Remember, very weird performance from City in Germany, and then they destroyed them at home for the second leg. A Leipzig team that lost Nkunku and Gvardiol, the two best players in the summer, and even if they replace them, even if the start of the season has been decent, Dani Olmo is in great form, for example, they're still not good enough to compete with City, so City would win that group easily.
How do you think Guardiola's doing at keeping the hunger going, keeping the fire burning in his City players?
You spoke about it then, Erling Haaland, just about motivation for different reasons, wanting to do it again, stay motivated, being the first team to potentially win 4 titles in a row. There's so many different and new factors to being iconic in a City shirt, so it's kind of easy regards to staying motivated.
OK. Quick look at Pep's record for so long. This was the competition that he couldn't win if he didn't have Leo Messi in his side, but he put that to bed last season. Of course, now he's got Erling Haaland in his side, which, when you look at his numbers in the Champions League, frankly ridiculous. 35 goals in 35 Champions League appearances, and 5 of those came in one game against RB Leipzig, who they've drawn again. I mean, that's scary, Johan.
Well, I think the combination is scary. Pep with Haaland and all those beautiful football players in behind. You know, people said Pep didn't do great with centre forwards, which wasn't true, and obviously Erling Haaland going in there winning the treble. It's just a match made in heaven. I love the fact that Pep is always evolving. You know, that's the one constant with him. He's always evolving, always trying to improve, tweaking the teams, going from the full-backs all of a sudden now to 4 centre-backs. Just amazing, and that partnership is just as good as it gets.
OK. Jolien said he was quite confident about City's chances because Mbappe didn't go to Real Madrid. Kylian Mbappe has stayed in Paris, and he'll be featuring, you imagine, in Group F, which looks an absolute sizzler. Newcastle are in there. We'll hear very shortly from the chief executive of Newcastle. But from a Paris Saint-Germain perspective, Jules, this summer you lost Messi and you lost Neymar. Are you a better side for all that?
I think they are a better side collectively, and that's what Luis Enrique is trying to do, to make players more as a team instead of being just 11 individuals trying to play together. And I think they start to do that. They went and signed Ugarte, for example, a quite obscure defensive midfielder who does a lot of hard work for the team, but I think they needed someone like that. And then there might be less talent, although Dembélé and Kylian Mbappe are there, and it's pretty good to have one on each wing. But I think they will play certainly more as a team. I think they will have that in them more than when we had a front three of Messi, Neymar and Mbappe, where neither of them really defended. They could not really care, and the team was cut in two. 7 players defending and not doing what to do, and then 3 attacking on their own.
Basically. Literally, I mean, it was amazing to watch, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and a lot of us thought, okay, this is an incredible front line, Messi, Neymar and Mbappe together, but also a lot of us thought the team is too unbalanced for them to go far, and Bayern destroy them, so...
A lot of gasps from Newcastle fans when they drew into that group, but I'm guessing that the other teams in that group won't want to be facing Eddie Howe's side either, right?
No, I mean, they're such a brilliant side. You know, the way that they kind of work on and off the ball. Eddie Howe's done an amazing job to get this group of players into the Champions League. And I like the squad depth. I think that's improved. Tonali's a good addition, another ball player in there to go with Guimaraes and Joelinton in that midfield. So I'm looking forward to watching Newcastle in the Champions League. I think Eddie Howe's got a great group of players to go and compete in. I wouldn't be surprised if they get it right, they even top that group.
Good Lord. All right. Well, first time back in the Champions League in 11 years. Darren Eales, Chief Executive of Newcastle United, is with Emma Dodds.
Well, Darren, it was the loudest noise around the auditorium when Newcastle came out of the pot. Give us your reaction to that draw.
Wow, I mean, what a group. I mean, it's a super group of death, isn't it? I mean, it's three great teams, as long with, Newcastle United. We're excited to be playing them, but Paris Saint-Germain, Borussia Dortmund, the Yellow Wall, and then obviously AC Milan and Sandro Tonali's whole team.
It'll be difficult games, but I'm sure the Newcastle United fans were absolutely rejoicing. 4 iconic clubs and ones that the fans will certainly enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I think of, you think of AC Milan, and I know in 2003 we had almost 10,000 Geordies over there in the wonderful city of Milan, and I don't think I've ever seen a Macam in Milan either, so it's going to be exciting for the Geordies. Paris Saint-Germain, one of the sort of footballing royalty, and I think, Dortmund as well. I think it's a great football club. The Yellow Wall's amazing. I think, both fan bases are going to appreciate each other, because the noise at St James's Park that first night when the Champions League music is going to be playing, I think it's going to be something really special.
How does it feel just being back here, having the club back part of this competition?
Oh, we're really excited. I mean, 20 years is a long time not being in the Champions League, and this is something that we had a great season last season, and we're not here just to make up the numbers. We want to be competing on all fronts, and I think we've got 6 big games ahead of us now in the group stages, but we've got a great coach, obviously, in Eddie Howe, great players, and we're really going to give it our all.
I was going to say that. What about your aspirations? What do you hope to achieve in this competition?
Well, look, I think, we're in it, which is the first thing. I think we want our fans to dream, and we've got a draw now and a group that they can sort of get excited about. And like I said, we feel like we've got the players and the coaching staff and the setup to compete with all of those teams. It's going to be tough. We understand that, but we're going to give it our best.
And what about the fans? Can they expect any more new faces before the end of the deadline?
I think we're pretty much set with what we've done. I mean, we're excited with the additions that we've got in this transfer window. And like I said, we feel we've got a great squad that can really compete in this competition.
Well, we look forward to watching you in it. Thanks for talking to us.
Thanks, Emma.
Cheers.
Welcome back, everyone, to our group stage draw reaction. Jolien Lescott, Owen Hargreaves and Julian Laurens here with us. Now, Arsenal, their quest for their first ever Champions League trophy begins with them in Group B. You see they've drawn there Sevilla, the Europa League winners last year, PSV, who Arsenal faced in the Europa League, and Lens, runners-up in Ligue 1. Before our reactions to that, let's hear from the sporting director of Arsenal, Edu, who's with Emma Dodds.
What's your reaction to that? You're in Group B in this Champions League group stage along with Sevilla, PSV and Lens.
Well, very traditional teams, stronger ones. To be in that competition, you cannot choose the team you're going to play against. So all of them is very, very hard to play against. So we are here, happy to be in the competition again, which is the most important for the club. It's most important for the player, for the staff, for everyone. So now let's enjoy the competition and let's see how can we behave in that competition as well.
Where does this competition lie within the priorities of Arsenal, given obviously the Premier League is a huge focus as well?
Well, when we're talking about Arsenal Football Club, we cannot prioritize anything, isn't it? We have to go there and try our best to play well all competition. Of course, to be in the Premier League, Champions League, the Cups, what we are participating as well, will be important to do our best and to perform in the best way possible as well, and do our best to finish in the best position as possible as well.
After 7 years away, though, it's great to have Champions League football back at the Emirates, though, isn't it?
Oh yes. I think the fans and the club really deserve that, because we are working so hard to come back for that situation. I think it's a big bonus for the last season, the way we behave as a club, the way the players, the staff, everyone works to be back in the Champions League. So it's a big bonus now. So I'm pretty sure the fans will enjoy the competition. As I said, I think everyone deserved it. And let's enjoy the competition again.
And how satisfied are you with the shape of the squad? We're almost at the end of the transfer window. What are your views on any activity that could take place?
Well, we are, so as everybody see, we make one very strong strategy to be very proactive in the beginning of the transfer window, and I think we did it. And now we are talking about trying to balance the squad a little bit better. We keep talking to a few clubs, but so far we are really happy with the transfer window, and we have to say, of course, thank you very much for all the people which work is in the club to make that happen. So good, exciting season ahead of us.
Thank you for talking to us. Good luck.
No, pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, it's been a busy summer for Edu and Arsenal after that near miss in the title run last season. So far, one or two teething problems for the Gunners. fitting the new players in? Kai Havertz, question marks over that. The group, at least, the draw has been kind to them, Jolien.
Yeah, definitely. But going back to referencing the signings, I think they've been very good in terms of their recruitment. It's going to take a little bit of time for them to get settled, but I think for what they've signed and the need for specific positions, I think it's been a very positive window for Arsenal, and they should be confident they go through.
OK. Sevilla, of course, all sorts of problems for English sides in the past. Right now, though, they look in some difficulty.
Terrible start of the season for them. 3 games in La Liga, 3 defeats. They lost big players like Bruno in goal, for example. Ocampos might be on his way. They might lose Acuna as well. It's not the team that we saw last year, not even the team that we saw playing well against City in the Super Cup, to be fair, and only losing on pens. So different. I think this is really a good draw for Arsenal. They should enjoy that.
All right, Lens are in there as well. PSV might be the dark horse of that group after the way they performed against Rangers this midweek.
Yeah, I thought they played brilliant, to be fair. Peter Bosz, we know he plays quite an aggressive style of football, high press, high possession. I thought they obviously dominated that. Would be a tricky game, obviously, away, but Arsenal, they'll have to be delighted with that group. I mean, Sevilla struggling. PSV and Lens are definite underdogs in there. OK. They
met in the group stage last year. They did indeed lose away in Eindhoven, but then beat them at the Emirates. Let's talk a little bit about Celtic's group, Group F, which features Feyenoord, who they last faced in the European Cup in 1970 when Feyenoord went on to win the title. Also in there, Atletico Madrid and Lazio. Atletico Madrid were terrible last year in the group stage. This season, they look like a completely different beast.
They've started well. It's true, they scored 7 goals at the weekend against Rayo Vallecano, who had won their first 2 games. So it looks certainly right now that Diego Simeone is making this team evolve a little bit, playing more attacking football. Memphis Depay, Alvaro Morata, Antoine Griezmann, all of that up front. So it looks good. In the Champions League, somehow, they seem to always go back to what they know best, which is defending and be hard to play against, which sometimes is not enough, as we saw last season. But you would think that they must be the favourite in that group. Right. And then for the rest, it's very open. Feyenoord, Lazio, who haven't started well, and Celtic, I think, can all claim that second place.
Celtic have a chance, you think?
Definitely.
Yeah. OK, excellent. Very good. Now, the other big names in the draw, which we haven't really touched on yet, Barcelona and Real Madrid. Owen, do you think they'll be relatively happy as well with the teams they're going to be up against?
Yeah, I think obviously Barca, obviously with the draw they're there with Porto and Shakhtar Donetsk and Royal Antwerp, big heavy favourites in that group. I think Xavi got Barca back to their best. Obviously, I think he still anticipates a few players coming in before the end of the window. And Real Madrid, I mean, that group of players that they have assembled there with Ancelotti. Bellingham's been absolutely on fire.
Right.
With Vinicius Junior and Valverde, Modric and Kroos. So, I mean, looking forward to watch Real Madrid in the Champions League this season.
Real Madrid in that Group C with Napoli and Braga and Union Berlin, who are one of the, I think, the teams that a lot of people are going to be fascinated to see how they can convert their Bundesliga form into European competition. Barcelona's group, though, just to check on that again, and with Porto, Shakhtar and Antwerp, this Barcelona team, their transfer activities in the last few days have been subject to a lot of news, and just on a transfer front, Jules, what do you make of the news that Ansu Fati is leaving Barcelona and heading to Brighton?
It's quite a surprising one. We were discussing with the boys, to be fair. It shows the attractivity of the Premier League and of Brighton, De Zerbi, what they're doing at the club, and he's great. If I told you 2 years ago that Brighton would sign a talent like Ansu Fati from Barcelona, we would not have believed it. So, well done to them. He lost his place in the team of Barcelona, and I don't think Xavi really believed in him anymore.
Right. Is he still that talent?
The talent is always there. I think you don't lose it. He was a prodigy kid at 16 to make his debut for that team. He had a lot of injuries. I'm not really sure where he's at in terms of, is it 50% of what he can do, 70, 80? He's certainly not 100%. So let's see what De Zerbi can do with him. But if you get him back to his best, I think he will be added value to any team in the Premier League or anywhere in Europe.
And what do you make of Barcelona's chances this year?
This is a great group for them. Last season they suffered. We said it. Bayern and Inter were too good for them. Right. Then they crashed out against United, who were too good for them. That was very disappointed. At least now, even if they're heavily favoured and the pressure comes with that, they should go through. And after that, the knockout stage is a different story. But it would be good for them to have an easy draw, I guess, because they would be busy in the league as well to compete with Atletico and Real Madrid. OK.
Inter, who qualified ahead of Barcelona in the Champions League group stages last season, drawn in Group D with Benfica, who they actually beat in, what was it? Benfica, who were one of the runaway successes of the group stage. Red Bull Salzburg in there and Real Sociedad as well. What are you most looking forward to? All the matchups we've talked about, Julian, which one are you most looking forward to?
Probably Newcastle versus PSG.
Yeah.
At St James's. the atmosphere, the players on show, the way that Newcastle play, I think that'll be one of the biggest games of the group stages. Obviously, Bayern, Man United as well, but for me, the Newcastle games will look super exciting.
Bayern and Man United, Owen.
Yeah, I mean, the history between the two teams is remarkable, obviously, so that's going to be a special game, Bayern Man United. But I'm with Jolien. I'm looking forward to that Group F. That Group F is going to be... Anybody can get through in that, and obviously Newcastle back in the Champions League is something really special.
Right. Is that the game PSG fans will be most looking forward to, the trip to St James's?
I think that would be pretty special, but all atmosphere, really, San Siro with Milan, to go to Dortmund as well, and the Yellow Wall would be pretty special. The Parc des Princes, I think, would be on fire, and the fixtures in that group could be keen as well.
OK.
Thank you.
Erling, we're coming over to you. Congratulations, first of all. Second individual award in a week. And your first season at Manchester City, I mean, it's difficult to have wanted more, right? 4 trophies. You're so young and you've won so much already. How are you feeling right now? How is it all seeming to you?
Yeah, of course, I feel good. What more can I say? I won the treble as 22 years old, and yeah, I'm kind of living the dream. This was my dream when I was young. So to be able to do this together with my teammates is something special, of course. So I'm really happy, and it also gives me so much motivation to keep on working to achieve more of the trophy that just stood there, and of course these are also really nice. So so yeah, it's free motivation, and I'm so happy.
The fact that you're so motivated is quite scary for opposition defences. And all of last season, every single game we covered of Manchester City, the question was, how do you stop Erling Haaland? I mean, 52 goals is incredible. How do you stop Erling Haaland? You're going to tell us that? No, of course you're not.
You shouldn't ask me this. You should
I'm
ask
not
someone
asking you
else.
that. OK, so I'm not going to ask you that. I knew you wouldn't be going to tell me anyway. So the question is, how do you keep that level up next season? Because you're going to want the same, you're going to want more. Can you do it?
I'll do my best, of course. But, I mean, as I said, it's motivation. It's about keeping the head clear, and I think even more eyes will be on me and the team now after winning the Champions League and everything. So we have to be more prepared. We have to be more sharper and everything. So for me, it's motivation, and I'm ready to try. I'm ready to do my best to have a new great season.
You know, you're surrounded by strong footballing figures, strong influences in the dressing room as well. I mean, we saw after, I think, the first game of the season, Pep, I mean, he's not here today to defend himself, but he was, going on at you. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Your dad's here as well. We see him all, everywhere. Who are you more scared of, your dad or Pep?
Good question. Sometimes Pep is a bit scary, I have to say. But again, my father also can be a bit scary. But anyways, this is something I like. I like when Pep shouts at me, because he tries to get something in my brain that he don't think I have. So I like it. So I'm not complaining at all. He just wants to make me a better footballer. So I'm not complaining at all. And my father and me, we argue a lot. We have a lot of good moments together. So I'm not complaining there either.
It's all in the right direction, isn't it?
Very honest answer as well. Love that.
The Grimaldi Forum in Monaco, and that's what's come out of the various hats. Group A already looks like an absolute sizzler with all sorts of storylines. Bayern Munich taking on Man United. Man United with Galatasaray again in a group. Group B, Arsenal will be up against Sevilla, PSV and Lens. So narrowly pipped to the French title last season, but faring a little less successfully so far this campaign. In Group C, my word, what a line-up there. Napoli and Real Madrid with Braga and New Boys Union Berlin. And Group D, last year's beaten finalists Inter joining Benfica, Salzburg and Real Sociedad. Group E sees Feyenoord, Atletico Madrid, Lazio and Celtic. Group F, potentially the toughest of the lot, with Paris Saint-Germain, Dortmund, a Tuchel reunion there, Milan and Newcastle. on their return to this competition. Man City with a perhaps slightly easier time of it against Leipzig, who they always seem to face, and two teams that they've never met before in this competition, Red Star Belgrade and Young Boys. In Group H, Barcelona, Porto, Shakhtar Donetsk and Antwerp. My word. All right, we're going to pick out some of the key headlines from that. Owen, let's begin with Bayern and Man United together again.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, obviously, I think initially when you saw Bayern come out and then Man United, I think you already thought group of death. But I think in the end, obviously, Copenhagen, Galatasaray,
right.
Bayern and Man United be obviously the two big favourites. But it'll be fascinating to see Harry Kane back in the UK.
Harry Kane, the player they could have had.
I'm sure they would have loved to have had him. It probably cost a little bit too much. But look, I think United got a good team, but I think Bayern are going to be one of the favourites in this Champions League. But a really good draw.
OK. There was even a suggestion that Thomas Tuchel at Bayern might want to bring Scott McTominay in from Man United. That would have been another interesting reunion if that doesn't go through in the next few hours before the transfer window closes. But it's an interesting approach that Tuchel is having. He's kind of in charge of the transfers at the moment before the arrival of a new sporting director in Munich. And there's a lot of names that we weren't expecting to see linked with the side.
Well, obviously, with Hasan Salihamidzic, sport director, leaving, and Oliver Kahn, I think there's a little bit of a void there, and I think he's probably using that to his strength with his experience, obviously, with the Premier League. There's certain players that he's probably quite keen on, which I can understand. But he's got a bit of power there right now, and to be fair, he's got a great team. I think he's a brilliant tactician, so I think they got a really good blend, and Harry Kane is the icing on the cake.
Absolutely. Bayern Munich with Man United, Copenhagen, who didn't exactly light up the competition in the group stage last year, but Galatasaray, that's going to be an interesting one as well, Jolie, and a lot of historical echoes for that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Tough place to play, atmosphere-wise, but obviously they made a few important signings and obviously optimism there. Zaha, especially one of the names, Mertens, has scored a great goal early in the season, so... Yeah, I don't think that's an easy group or easy place to play, especially for the way Man United are playing at the moment.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because Man United are a huge name, and the game against Bayern in '99, one of the matches that's kind of carved their legend in this competition. But what do you think the perception is of them among other European sides, Jules? Will those other clubs be quite happy to draw this Man United?
Well, I think we saw last season that they were still a long way off the top teams in Europe, and the way they were, the way they went last season, not in the Champions League, for example, was probably disappointment. However, they have signed big players this summer in Onana, Højlund, and Mason Mount. They spend a lot of money. There might be more to come between now and Friday, and I think they will qualify with Bayern. I mean, it would be a huge shock if United didn't make out of this squad, even with Galatasaray away, which is a tough trip. Copenhagen, we saw them with City last season in Dortmund. So, for me, United and Bayern are by far the two favourites and should go through.
You thought maybe that was going to be the toughest group when those two teams came out, first of all, for Group A, but Group F has probably stolen that title, would you say, Owen?
Yeah.
Group F, Group of Death?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we were joking with Julian there. He said you're not favourites in that group anymore after Dortmund was drawn, because I think it's going to be a tricky season for PSG. It's nice to see they're going to go with a lot of these talented young French players, but that feels like an incredibly even group. And I think if you're Newcastle, obviously it's a difficult draw, but Newcastle under Eddie Howe, I think they can fancy themselves to go anywhere and get a result. And obviously at home,
right,
that's one of the best atmospheres in football. I think they're going to be right up for this.
It's going to be interesting for Sandro Tonali, assuming he's fit and selected, of course, but taking on the club which he was a boyhood fan of.
Yeah, obviously documented that he didn't want to leave, and I'm sure he's looking forward to going back and probably wanted to avoid them in his competition. But like Owen said, that is a level group. I think all them teams will believe they'll qualify, and it's an exciting games in that group for me.
Jules, there's PSG in it and everyone's calling it a level group. What do you think?
I know, I'm not happy. I mean, I have to say to people, when we were watching the draw, every time there was a big name, they were saying, oh, it's the PSG group, they're going to draw in PSG. Here we have. So, I don't know, maybe it's good to start with tough games instead of having an easy group stage, and then you get to the knockout stages and you face bigger teams. And I don't know, it'd be fascinating. There's so many new stories. The Newcastle ownership, obviously, the Saudis against the Qataris. That would be interesting as well. Milan and PSG have a long history of facing each other in Europe as well. And Dortmund faced PSG the season where PSG reached the final in 2020. So
absolutely,
it's not all bad.
All right, loads of other questions about PSG. Of course, you've just seen two of the greatest players in the game depart, and yet you might be stronger. But we'll touch on that in a second or two, perhaps. Let's quickly have a look at Group B, where Arsenal will find themselves up against Sevilla, PSV, who we saw put out Rangers in fairly dramatic fashion just last night, and Lens. How does this group stack up for Arsenal? Is that quite a doable task?
I think they'll be confident that they'll top that group and go through. I'm confident in Arsenal winning that group, to be honest. There's not many challenges there. Again, variations in styles, atmospheres, but the way Arsenal have been playing over the last 12 months, you expect them to top it.
Sevilla, who were in pot one by virtue of winning the Europa League again, but off to a disastrous start this season in La Liga. They're bottom of the table. Lens as well, who came second in Ligue 1 last season. Jaws not off to a great start this time around. How much of a threat will they pose?
I think they will come good. They signed some really interesting players. It's just at the start of the season, they had tough games, especially at PSG last weekend, for example. So they will get there. I'm more worried about Sevilla, who are losing top players, who really are not playing well at all. For Lens, the stats are good. PSV are a good team. They played Arsenal in the group stage of the Europa League last season, and Arsenal lost away in Eindhoven. So this is a good group. It's a good draw for Arsenal. They'll have to be careful, especially away from home, but they should qualify. I agree with Jordan.
OK, the holders, Man City in Group G, just as they were last season, auspiciously enough. We'll talk about that more in a second or two. But right now, we're going to be getting back to Monaco for the other part of today's business there at the Grimaldi Forum. It's UEFA's Player and Manager of the Year Awards. Over to Reshman. Guess who? While here in the studio, we have Julian Lescott and Owen Hargreaves, both Champions League players, of course, and Julien Laurent, who knows all about everything in Europe. Fabulous. Looking forward to your hot takes on who comes out of the urn. This is such a huge day for supporters all across the continent. For the players involved, are they kind of sitting there waiting, who are we going to get?
Yeah, definitely. I think from every aspect, especially if you're looking from a point of view of Newcastle back in the competition, a lot of the first time for a lot of their players. So I remember when that was my situation. We were around the TV and waiting for the...
Right. Owen, were you agog when you were playing back in early noughties?
No, I think when it's your first or second time around, you're super excited. As you kind of get used to it, you're more accustomed to it. I think Johnny makes a great point about Newcastle. You know, all of them, the supporters, the coaches, the players, they're probably all sat together, waiting to see who they draw. But it's the Champions League draw is a beautiful thing, just to see who you're going to play against. Maybe play against somebody you looked up to as an idol. Players who are already talking about who they're going to swap shirts with, probably.
Yeah.
If
just look at the spectacle, where it is.
Yeah.
Red carpet event. It's a very glamorous and prestigious situation to be in, especially for Newcastle.
It's the biggest adventure in club football, isn't it, the Champions League? And today, the first day of a new campaign, really. It's the last day, though, that we'll have a Champions League group stage draw, George, because it's the last season that we're going to have that format.
That's right. Then the Swiss model starts from next season with basically two mini divisions, if you want, or two groups, where you will play teams and the top 8 will qualify. It will be very different to the home and away ties that we see in the group stage, which I think the dynamic is going to be a bit different for the competition. Maybe you prepare slightly differently because it's a longer period where you can still qualify instead of just the 6 games that you have in a group stage like we know it now and like we've been known for many years. So it's a bit different and to adapt for managers and teams, but the draw will still be exciting, I think, even next season, because you will still hope to face the bigger teams if you're the smaller team, and for the bigger side, try to avoid a group of death or something like that.
All right, well, that's something to look forward to in 12 months' time. But for now, let's check out how this year's draw works. There's 32 teams involved. They're divided into 4 pots, depending on their seeding. Pot 1 has the champions of the domestic leagues. Within there, the Eredivisie winners from last season, Feyenoord, and also the Europa League winners, Sevilla. But you've got your heavyweights in there, your Barcelonas, your Napolis, Bayern, of course, Owen. Have they made many signings over the summer? We'll come on to them in a second or two. But Man City, the holders, Julian, at this point it's traditional to ask how your nerves are. What do you think about Man City's prospects of retaining?
I'm a lot more confident that Mbappe is not going to Real Madrid. I think I would have been a lot more nervous. But yeah, listen, it's so early in the competition. The draw hasn't even been made, so to predict a winner is a bit early for me.
OK, that's kind of what we're going to be doing before the draw actually gets made. Because I want to ask Owen, you about Bayern Munich, the winners in 2020. Maybe been a bit disappointed by their European form in the last couple of seasons, but the arrival of the big English centre-forward, what difference does that make for them?
I think it's everything. I mean, getting a centre-forward, obviously losing Lewandowski Last season, they realised that was a huge hole within their team, and I think the team has pretty much everything else. The defence, goalkeeper, midfield, everything. You've got so many 4 or 5 wingers. They just need a centre forward, and Harry Kane's one of the best of the best. So Thomas Tuchel got his way. I'm amazed he left Tottenham and they got him out of there. But Bayern have obviously got a really special one. And I think they'll be one of the favourites, obviously, with City and Real Madrid. Bayern, they must be the best 3 teams for sure. Yeah,
it's going to be really interesting to see who Bayern draw. A lot of clubs won't want to get them and Harry Kane, Man United. Arsenal as well. He's got such a terrific record against Arsenal. Let's have a quick look at Pot 2, which has Man United and Arsenal in there, as well as Real Madrid. So there's some dangerous sides in there, Jules.
Yeah, they are. And to be fair, we are quite used to have groups with 2 top clubs, and then let's see who you find who you get in Pot 3 and Pot 4. But in those 2, of course, if you're Man City, if you can avoid Real Madrid, of course, or if you're Bayern Munich, Napoli, I mean, 2 clubs from the same country can't face each other, obviously, in the group stages, so you won't have a Barca and Real Madrid in the same group. But for all the big clubs that we saw in Pot 1, obviously Real Madrid, I think, are the ones to avoid in that Pot 2. I guess Inter, the finalists from last season against City, also maybe to avoid. And then if you want a good draw, I guess Porto and the Dortmund side that started very slowly in the Bundesliga are probably the best 2 to find in that Pot 2.
Atletico Madrid had a rotten time of it in the Champions League last time around, but have started like an absolute house on fire this season in La Liga. Pot 3 includes last season's semi-finalists AC Milan, along with the likes of PSV. And it's an interesting Pot 3 because you think these are the weaker teams. But Inter were in Pot 3 last year, made it all the way to the final. So potentially you could have some dark horses in there. Who catches your eye as we look down the list of the 8 teams from Pot 3?
I mean, Milan really are the team to avoid. But you mentioned Inter. They were still in the group of death with Barcelona and Bayern. So Pot 3 usually... you will face 2 top clubs from Pot 1 and Pot 2. But if you avoid Milan there... And I guess maybe a team like Lazio, although Lazio have been quite poor so far this season, that's probably the 2 top clubs in that Pot 3.
OK. Quick check then on to Pot 4, because there are some interesting names in there, including Newcastle, you already mentioned, Julian. That's going to be... They're going to be a real force, not least for the home games and the atmosphere there. Yeah, definitely. And looking at that group, you'd probably say the names and the kind of atmospheres that predicts that's probably stronger than Pot 3. Pot 4 looks tough, actually. Definitely. Union Berlin as well, their first time in the Champions League. Owen, what are they going to be like? Yeah, an amazing story. I mean, the way they've grown over the last few years has just been remarkable. But you think about it in there with Celtic and with Newcastle. A few new teams, obviously, Union Berlin, but just can't wait to see Newcastle in the Champions League. So a lot of hostile atmospheres in there. Even Lens is hostile to go there. So
Sarai as well. There.
Position maintenant. Alors que se passe-t-il? Le buteur Hakim Ziyech est resté au sol.